there is so much that I learned that there's no way I can ever go back and regret it.
Yeah.
It's like, if I choose to be here for another 6 months, if I choose to be here for another 6 years, it will be something that I choose and will always be the right choice because I chose it. If I choose to leave and do my own thing, or part-time do my own thing and stay in some capacity, it will be the right choice because I chose it.
Yeah.
So that's what I've learned, even with working with him. There's no right or wrong. There's no good or bad. It's a choice. And then you can make another choice and another choice. And when I started running in the morning, right, like my 5 a.m. runs, that was my choice to put myself first.
Purpose in the youth. Purpose in the youth. Purpose in the youth podcast. Welcome back to the Purpose in the Youth podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Purpose in the Youth podcast with your favorite bearded man, the one, the only Bobbbaaaay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Purpose in the Youth podcast with your favorite bearded man, the one, the only Bobbbaaaay. Today in the building, Tiff Tyler.
What's up?
What's going on?
I'm excited to be here.
I am very excited to have you here.
Did you do this like Rob Van Dam? Or
Yeah,
no?
so... all right, I'm going to be honest with you.
Okay.
I like laugh at myself because I'm always like kind of changing it up on the intro, but I recently figured out that when I point to the camera, this is your favorite bearded man, so I'm pointing to the people, the one, the only Bobbbaaaay. You see? So it's like it kind of goes in motion, but if somebody's listening, they're probably like, this guy is absolutely cooked. Like if they're not watching visually, they're like, this guy is out of his mind.
Like what was that? Yeah, no. You watch wrestling?
No.
Like WWE? Oh my gosh. Growing up, Rob Van Dam, like
that's
how
what
he would do it. And I was just like, that just took me back to like 10 years old just watching that. Anyway.
I mean, I promise I didn't steal from him, but I would imagine, does it a lot better than me.
I mean, shoot. I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you didn't do it well, I would have been like, oh my God.
You would have been like, this is off to a rough start.
Yeah, I was like, I got to go, guys. Yeah, it's been great.
I'm out of here. Great podcast. We'll see you next time. 3.5 years almost. You said next month will be 3.5 years of producing the School of Greatness podcast with Lewis Howes. Anybody that has listened to some of my podcasts, they know that is one of the biggest inspirations, pretty much the sole inspiration to how Purpose in the Youth came about. In that 3.5 years, like what would you say has been the biggest shift or change about you?
It changes every time someone asks me this question.
I
so bet. If you've listened to anything else I've ever said, don't be like, she's lying.
She's lying.
She didn't say that the last time.
Yeah.
I definitely have tougher skin. 2016, when I first started with Lewis, was the hardest year probably of my life to date because I thought that I worked really hard. I thought that I was like a hustler. And then you meet someone who truly lives and breathes it and you're like, oh, I'm not even close. So when I first came in with him, I was his first full-time videographer, the only person to actually like do that. Like, so courses, I filmed his courses, I filmed the podcast, I filmed his first ever Summit of Greatness, I filmed his first ever mastermind. Like, he was doing a lot of firsts when I started. So there were no weekends. There wasn't anything. I went home to Florida only once for Christmas. Like, I was there in and out. And he didn't know that it was too much for one person. I didn't know that it was too much for one person. But it definitely, like now when looking back, it's 3.5 years later, we have 4 editors that kind of come in and out. And we have a whole other production team that works on like videos and stuff. And at least for the 4 editors, they are not doing more than what I was doing by myself. Like in 2016, I was producing 4 to 8 videos or more a week. They produce 4 to 8 videos or more a week. And I was still shooting the same amount. We still had the same amount of events. And it was just like a perspective change. Like I thought I couldn't do it or it was too hard. And it was too hard to sustain.
Yeah.
You can't do that for 3.5 years. But to know that, you can push yourself further than you think you can, and you really can achieve a lot more than you think. Like, that's been the biggest lesson with him. Like, I just don't, there's not as much doubt in myself or what I can do or what I'm capable of than when 2016, when I was 24 years old starting with him.
Yeah, it's tough too because you're sitting in on some of the biggest guests in the world, like literally the top 1% of their industries.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there thinking like, probably, wow, I got this great new job. I'm helping create content for this amazing brand. And now I'm listening to somebody who's done X, Y, and Z, who has been doing this for 20, 30 years. It's intimidating, I would imagine. Even listening to just listening to the podcasts of School of Greatness or other people, it's like,
yeah,
damn, I got so much more work to put in. And these guys are doing all this. Like, where do I even start? Then I get overwhelmed of like, I'm not doing enough. Yeah. Then you realize, okay, this is all going to take a long time. What's the 1 to 2 to 3 things I can do per day that's going to help set me up so that 2-3 years goes by, 4 or 5 years goes by, then I'm starting to do something of that magnitude.
Right.
But I think that can be somewhat overwhelming in the beginning.
Well, yeah, you're better than me. The first year was very depressing. I think I said this on another interview that I did. Like, just showing up and being there day after day and seeing all these people made me feel very inadequate. Like, kind of like what you just said. I can't do this. Like, you know, this person is maybe 32. Most people come in are like 32-ish, 38. Like, so it seems also like, oh, I've only got 10 years to make this happen.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You start comparing yourself.
Age, because none of them, I mean, we had Larry King on. We've had, people
Larry
who are
King
way older. But for the most part, they're younger people who have just done more than normal people have, right? Like, I think even when you talk about Gary Vee, like, a lot of people, they don't start their businesses till like 35 and up, right? But all the people that we see are in their late 20s to early 30s and already seem to be very successful. Yeah. So not only was I like, okay, all these people are way more successful than I am, or have hit at my age, they did something more than I'm doing. And they also, lost my train of thought. They also, like, what can I say? Man, what was I gonna say? They hit a certain age, right, where they've hit a certain amount, but then also they I forgot what I was gonna say. Shoot, man, we'll go back to it. It'll come back.
It's gonna pop up. It's gonna pop up. Just the comparison of the age, like just.
It was the comparison of the age, and I think, man, it was such a good point. Wait till it comes back, bro.
We're gonna, you know what? This is gonna be fine because we're gonna have so much. We're not even gonna. Honestly, I like just getting the. It's like starting up the engine with like the opening question, but before we really get into like lessons that you've learned from working the School of Greatness, I wanna paint a picture. I wanna spend a little bit of time to work us up to how you even got to that position of working with Lewis for the School of Greatness. So, talk to me about like growing up in Florida. Is this Hollywood, Florida that you grew up in?
Yeah. The Hollywood to Hollywood series. You really did do a lot of research, man. You like went all the way back.
Don't you worry. We got a lot. Man, put your seatbelt on. I'll tell you that right now.
I'm impressed. I'm very impressed.
What's this place like for you growing up?
So I was really only in Florida for high school and college. Okay. And high school I was basically in like, I try to describe it to people. You ever watch The Princess Diaries? Like back in the day.
I think my sister did. I think
my
sister might have been. I might have seen a couple episodes.
For all the women out there. No, it's a movie. What are you talking about? It's Anne Hathaway's first movie. Oops. What do you mean? A couple episodes.
Now I'm getting all the women to unsubscribe to the podcast as we speak. We'll see you guys next. See you ladies next time.
You talk to your sister. Okay, so she says in that movie, she says in high school, like, basically she was like, I'm invisible and I'm good at it. Like, it's like she was just like, she's really good at being invisible was like kind of the line that she said. And that's sort of like how I felt in high school. Like, I played on the basketball team. I was in the video production class. I actually learned how to cut my first video when I was 14 in video production class. But like, I was very quiet, very afraid of people, very afraid to like look someone in the eye, talk to people. Like, I just like being a wallflower and just not really speaking. And then when I graduated and I went to college, I was just like, really frustrated with that. Like, if I could spend another 4 years being really quiet and just, or I can make a really big difference and like leave a legacy in this school. Yeah. And that was what I thought going into my freshman year. It was just like of college. Yeah. Like, I don't want to be this person anymore.
You were even the quiet person though, not to cut you off, even
no worries.
even as an athlete.
Yeah.
That's interesting because usually somebody that is quiet, I would assume, is just not an athlete, is behind the scenes.
And the thing is too is like I didn't play that much, so like I was the kind of person like in practice I never cheated. I always like if we were going to do a certain amount of push-ups, a certain amount of sit-ups, if we were going to bench, like you know what, I was like benching like 80 pounds, like I was always trying to get stronger. I was never cheating. And you know, the stars of the team who were really good didn't need to practice as much, and they didn't really practice as well, but I was always just like, man, maybe I'll play if I practice hard enough. And I would be the hardest person and never really get off the bench. And I think that was a big thing for me, was just like, no matter how much I do behind the scenes, no one's going to see me unless I speak up and do something about it, right? Like, I remember my coaches were always just like, be more aggressive. Like, you need to stop being so scary or whatever. When it came to these things, I was like, being so scary, like, I'm not scared. Why is that the impression that everyone's getting when I like, you know, play or whatever? So, yeah, when I went into college, I was just like, I got to do something different. Like, I can't spend another 4 years working really hard while nobody's looking, and then get nothing really coming from it. Like, that's kind of how I went into it. But I went and I studied film and multimedia studies. So like I said, at 14, I had a video production class, and it changed my life. I was just like, oh, like I had a camera since I was like 10 or younger. But when actually learning how to edit at 14, I was like, wow. And then I played on the basketball team, but I also cut the highlight reels for the basketball team. Oh my
God! So you're literally you're editing for your own team.
Editing for my own team, where like the seniors, I remember my junior year was the first time I got paid at all for video production, where I cut the highlight reels for the seniors. So like the stuff that I cut for them, they submitted to colleges for them to get accepted.
Wow.
And I don't know if everyone did, but I know at least one person did get acceptance from my video that I created for her. And to the point where she was like, can I get 7 more copies? I just want to keep like sending this out to people. And my coach paid me for it. And I was just like, it had never dawned on me. When I first asked my parents for a camera, when I first took that production class, that I would make a living creating videos.
It was like, just solely a passion. Like,
it was just something that made me different. Everyone in my family sings, writes music, performs on stage, and like that was never me, right? I was the wallflower, invisible kid, like, please don't look at me. And so I'm filming them. I'm always the one behind the camera, like filming them. And then when I was like, wow, I can actually get paid for this, I was like, I got to go to college and study this. There's nothing else I even would think of to major in. I have to major in filmmaking.
Before the college years, though, like how, I know you mentioned before the podcast, you had 2 brothers, and then you're mentioning how there was a lot of music going on. Like, describe to me what this household is like for you growing up. What is the relationship with your family? So entertaining.
We had like a family band. And like my brothers, like, my younger brother sings, my older brother raps, and my mother is a singer. And my father used to like try to DJ when he was in college or whatever. It was just a lot, right? It was just we're a very musical family. And I think also my mom and dad being the youngest of their siblings, they get to, I don't know, the youngest are usually the artist types. I'm not the youngest, but they're usually sort of like the free ones who like know everyone took care of, so they can dream a bit more than like the older ones tend to be the parents, right? Like, oh, as soon as your brother or sister is born, you end up being a parent, right? You take care of them. The middle child are typically the peacemakers, and the youngest kid is typically the artist, the free bird. And so I think having both my parents be the youngest people, like they were just way more free. They were a lot more just like, we're gonna go to different churches and we're gonna perform and we're gonna play music and we're gonna record it. And that's what I remember coming home from middle school and high school, and it was to practice with my family. I played the drums as well, so like that was just, we were just very musical. My mom she encouraged a lot of freedom of expression. My dad did the same thing. It just wasn't like, even I didn't need to go to college. Like, there was no pressure to go to college necessarily. It was just like, oh, Tiff's gonna go to college, cool.
Wow.
But it wasn't like, okay, you need to become a doctor or a lawyer, you need to do these different things. Like, we just didn't have that kind of family.
That support is so important, because there are people out here that get told you're going to graduate high school and you're going to become a lawyer, you're going to become a banker, you're going to become X, Y, and Z. And that, it's just, I grew up very similar household of like, there's so much that's why I like taking the time to understand how Tiff got to where she is today, because it's like these little things is probably what helps set you up to be able to creatively have fun while you're young and try these things out and see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Now when you get the camera though, when you're in elementary school, whatever, like what are you enjoying about having one? Is it just documenting your family? Is it?
Yeah, like I said, when you grow up with a family, a bunch of like weird artist people, it's hilarious on camera, you know, and everyone wants to perform for the camera, like as opposed to like you hang out with your friends maybe and they're like, oh, get that camera out of my face. I mean, when we were growing up, not now, everyone was like, please point it at me, but like
I need to make some content.
Yeah, give me that selfie, like, yo, that'd be great, put it on the gram, you know, like now everyone's like, please find a friend with a camera, but like none of my they're just not shy, so there was always something to film. We would put on like plays from the Bible, which is super embarrassing, but like
I love it.
We would do the family band stuff, we would do so much stuff, and so there was always something to film. And even if I just busted it out while we just came home and was doing nothing, there was somebody was going to do something weird or silly or funny. And so I just think having them be my first subjects or whatever, it
made it
easy
fun.
And it was also, like I said, I think it was what made me different. Like no one, they could barely turn on the camera, you know what I mean? And I knew how to, you know, I was playing with all the buttons, I learned everything about it. I was able to, like I said, when I hit 14 and learned how to edit on Final Cut, 7 I think.
Wow.
It was just like, oh shoot, like I can bring it into the computer, now we can do this stuff with it. Like it was just something that no one else knew around me how to do, and I felt like this was something at least was just 100% mine. Yeah, because music wasn't 100% mine, it was everybody's. Right, but now this is just Tiff.
So when junior year comes and you get your first time getting paid to make the basketball video, right? Crazy. And you don't even have your parents saying like you need to go to college. What is getting you want to go? You went to Florida Atlantic University.
Yeah.
Why did you go there knowing like I need to go there to work on film more, or what's like the true inspiration? Because you see you can make money doing film. Yeah. Your parents aren't like probably on you about you need to go to college, you need to be successful. Why Florida Atlantic? What's the vision going in?
It's just like for me, and I think for a lot of people, college is the way to grow up before you grow up.
Amazing. Yep.
So like I couldn't speak really in high school, right? Like it was I was so quiet. And those 4 years of college, I ran the radio station for 3 years. I was like on RSA, which is like the Resident Student Association, but it allowed me to live on campus for free for another 3 years. I became executive of the year because I was VP of RSA while I was manager of Our Radio. Like I like was everywhere all the time. And to be able to run an organization, I became president of that same organization, RSA, at one point. And you know, when they're making new residence halls, you couldn't call them dorm rooms. It was like you never say dorm room. It was called residence halls. In case any of my old college buddies are listening. When they built new residence halls, I was the one standing at a podium speaking in front of a group of people, giving a speech about the residence halls. Whereas if anyone knew me from high school, they'd be like, Tiff talks? That's how she sounds? Like and then I'm running a radio station. I'm hiring and firing people. DJs. I was a DJ my freshman year, and then I became their manager, and I'm probably the youngest manager. I was like 19 running the radio station in school. Like I had the intention of like, I'm going to go all in, I'm going to show up, and I'm going to make a difference. And like I needed that 4-year gap because I had no confidence in myself leaving high school. There was no way I was going to negotiate money or ask people for money right out of high school. I needed to be in college first to do that.
And I think that's the beauty of when you go to college, is that you know that you're going to a university or a place where nobody knows who you are, and you can create that. So if you want to come in blazing hot with the torch saying, everybody follow Tiff, all right, I guess we're following her. Like you can get up on stage there, you don't care because nobody knows anything of your previous history. It's like the most beautiful refresh button that now it's like, how do I want my 2.0 life to look, and how do I take everything that I've learned growing up and apply that? Because that's when you can do that. And I mean, it's just crazy to think that you're somebody who's quiet to now I'm directing the residence halls. I'm running a radio station. Like that's a huge confidence booster. Like where did that actual confidence come from though?
Well, so I think here's what I've kind of learned from that situation. You have to walk through the door, but once you actually start taking steps towards what you want, people around you will encourage you. So like even with Lewis, but just going back to those days, the people who were in that radio station really encouraged me. I was a freshman, like running to become manager my sophomore year. But I showed up to that radio station every day. I was there just hanging. I was just always there. And the other person who was way older than me, I think he was like almost going to be a senior, no one got along with him. They really liked me because I was just a fun person to be around. I might have been quiet when I first got there, but I was always there. I was just there, and I wasn't rude or mean to people. And so when it came to apply for the station manager job, everybody in that station wanted me to be that person, and they encouraged me to go for it. So I think it's the same thing like when I just skip forward just a little bit. When I moved to LA, so I graduated, I worked in my first production job, right? And maybe after 3-4 months of any job I've worked, except for School of Greatness, I like knew how to do the job, you know, and you get a little bored after you know how to do the job because it becomes routine. That first job that I had, I was just kind of coming in as a production assistant. It was like wristwatch company or whatever, just 1-minute videos for that. But on the weekends we had this like HGTV almost thing, like QVC. We were live for 3 hours, and we had 2 hosts in a studio in a booth, and there was someone directing remote cameras and 3 people in the back playing back graphics and like pulling up the names of the watches and stuff. And after 4 months I was directing, right? And it was so weird for me, but the hosts wanted me to direct more than anybody else in that studio because I was nice. Yeah. I made jokes on the
you lightened the air a little bit.
I was the new person who came in with no assumptions, with no like, oh, this host is hard to work with or whatever. Even though people would tell me, oh, this person's hard to work with and all that stuff, I made relationships with everyone in there. I was just nice to everybody. And so when it came to being ready to do it, they wanted me to jump, you know, because they just wanted to work with me more. And so from college to even that first job, just being a nice person, coming in and just being me and just speaking up more, having a good relationship with people, that was my differentiator. Not that I was more talented or more skilled or had more experience. It was just being a good person.
Yeah.
Truthfully.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's been some people have hired me without looking at my reel. They just meet me sometimes and they're just like, she's cool. Like, I feel like I can say things around her and I'm not going to be judged. And that's the kind of thing that when I walk in with people, when I talk to people, when I first meet people, like, can I make them feel good about themselves? Can I just let them feel open and they can say anything, and like not coming from a place of like, why are you smiling at me? Why are you looking at me in the eye? Like, just no judgment. And so that was my thing. Like I said, just to recap, it's you got to walk through the door and you got to start making the steps. But when people are around you, they are the ones that encourage you and will encourage me to try the bigger things, to go for the manager job, to go for the director job, to even move to LA. When I was leaving that job, my boss, the head of that company, was sad to see me go, but was not going to let me not go. When he knew that the trip and the opportunity was coming up, he was like, I really wish, I mean, of course, I want you here.
I want you to stay.
But you got to get your butt to LA and you got to try it. Yeah. So I give credit to everyone around me for seeing the greatness in me that I couldn't quite see and actually helping that come to life.
Yeah.
But if I didn't put myself in those positions for people to see that, then it wouldn't exist.
Well, you got to credit yourself too for just being a good person and just kind of being open to, I'm just going to, regardless if somebody's telling me, oh, this host is hard to work with, I don't care what you say. I'm just going to be a good person. I'm going to put the good energy into the world. And I swear it's like 60% is who you are and 40% skill. People just want to be around good people.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's, at the end of the day, I'd rather just be around good people. Like, I'm not trying to pay somebody that I don't want to be around. I'd rather invest into somebody that gives me good energy, makes me feel confident. And I try to do the same, where it's like, if I'm in an environment where I'm meeting new people, it's like, I'm not going to ask for any favors, especially with guests that come in. I'm not here to bring guests in and then ask them for a favor. I'm here to make sure that they have a great conversation. We establish a relationship, we go about our ways, and then maybe one day we reconnect and something happens. But it's just about that energy of being a good person. And then it says a lot about the boss who's telling you, go chase the dream, go to California, because there are people that would be selfish and say, don't do that. Like, you need to stay here. Like, go chase the dream in a couple years.
They were helping me plan it out. Like, this is also a thing too, and I don't necessarily call it luck. Sometimes I think it's divine purpose, but like, I've met so many people who are just like, how can I help you? Right? But like I said, like you said, if you walk into a place with that in your brain, like, how can I help you? You get that from other people. Yeah. But especially moving out to LA, that was the number one skepticism for me, was like, oh my God, is everyone going to be so on their hustle, so on their thing, so cutthroat that no one's going to let me walk into a door or give me an opportunity or let me just try something new because I'm 1 year out of school. But literally the first or second day I moved here, I met an Emmy-winning cinematographer. It happened to in a I went to like a gallery or whatever, like a photo gallery. I met the person who sells all the photos on the second floor. Her name is Paris. And I was she was like, oh my God, did you just move here yesterday from Florida? And she was like, tell me everything about your life. And I'm like, I want to be a filmmaker. You know, I'm saying the thing, the dream. I want to do all these different things. And she was so excited for my excitement of wanting to do that. She was like, you won't believe this. Last week, I met a cinematographer who works on a Nickelodeon set or Disney set. And he invited me and my son to come. You should come with us and meet him and see what happens. And I'm like, this is day 2. This is like day 1 or day 2 that I just happened to like walk into an art gallery and just express myself to someone. And then I went with her to this it's a longer story, but I went with her on set, met him, and then for the next 2 weeks I shadowed him on set. This DP
on Nickelodeon?
It was Disney. It was Dog with a Blog.
Wow.
It was like, and so it was just like this Disney kids show, but he saw me, he saw my passion. I didn't ask to like get paid. I was just like, yo, can I just come again tomorrow? Is that okay if I just come tomorrow and watch you do your thing? And he was like, sure. So for 2 weeks, I was there every day. Wow. He didn't ask me to do anything because legally you can't, but I just shadowed, you know what I mean? I was just there. Observing, watching, meeting everybody. And then 2 weeks later, he had an indie job and he hired me to do the indie job for him. And all of a sudden, I'm an assistant camera person. I'm not a PA. I didn't even start out I never did PA work until like literally a couple weeks ago. I did my first PA job. I started out as assistant camera person, the second assistant camera, I think. And so like lenses and all that stuff and sticking into the cinematography department, I almost like skipped steps by accident by just meeting someone the second day coming out here. But like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I just happen to be around cool people who like, when I express my energy and I'm happy, they're like, how can I help you? Especially like you said, when you come in, you're like, I'm not trying to get something from you. I don't want you to do this thing for me. I just moved here and I just have a dream, and she was the catalyst for my dream. And then his name's Johnny, like was another catalyst for my dream. So it was just this weird, just like on set for a while, a bunch of different gigs, random stuff, right? So not necessarily like, oh wow, I can finally make a living. That wasn't quite it yet. It was just when gigs came along. So I was almost like a freelance AC for probably 6 to 8 months, just trying to find as much as I could, but never necessarily enough for rent yet.
Yeah.
And then my cousin who I moved here with, she works for the WNBA, and she came home with like these videos she shot on her phone and was like, hey, I want to pitch something to my boss. Can you just spruce these up a little bit? Because I took it on my phone. It doesn't look that great. And this is my thinking behind it. I had 2 choices. I could have just color corrected it and gave it back to her and like, here you go. But I was like, I have nothing to do. I spent 5 hours pulling B-roll from YouTube of everything I can find from the LA Sparks, the WNBA team. Found a bunch of free music tracks off of YouTube, and I put graphics on it. I put these like weird borders to like match their colors. I grabbed the logo so I could grab the right colors, and I spent 5 hours finishing these videos for her. No intention of working for them or whatever. I was just like, here you go. She took it into her boss, and the next day she comes home and they're like, yo, they want you to come in and shoot it for real. They thought it was really good, but they want the like real camera quality, so they want to pay you to come and shoot it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Wow. Like, it's just this like, I think when you first move and you just first need to do something, you just do stuff and you do things to the best of your ability, and people around you see that and want to keep that fire, and they want to keep that fire around them and keep that fire like ignited. Yeah,
you seize the opportunity. Before we even touch on like the Sparks, because I know that clearly played a role, like why with this cousin, what I think is also so weird is that you're like putting out there into the world. You're telling everybody when you're in Florida, I want to move to LA. Like, this is the place you need to go.
Man, you did so much research. Why do you know more about my life than I do?
Shout out to your cousin Danita. That was the reason you got out here. But
now
like,
she's the president of the LA Sparks.
Wow.
She was VP 3 years ago. Oh, no, almost 5 years ago when we moved here. Now she's the president. We went to the preseason opener last night, and it was the first time I got to see her as president, and I was just like,
you're a boss.
Who knew?
Yeah.
4 years ago, I'm sleeping on your couch, and we're both trying to make it work, and she's running the entire organization now.
I'm curious though. So she obviously ends up calling you saying, "I'm moving to LA. Like, will you come with me?" You're already interested in going to LA, so it was like it seemed like a no-brainer. But why did you want to move to LA? What was it about this city that was pulling you in?
I mean, I think I'm trying to remember the first. I mean, I was already thinking in college.
I'm gonna just push this back a little bit.
I was already thinking in college. LA? I was kind of like telling people like, I want to move to LA. But this is one of those things that you do with no plan, right? Like I was about to graduate. I'm gonna have my film degree. I was doing some freelance gigs in Florida, but at the same time, I'm like, nothing's really here. Like Miami, there's a certain market, but for me, everything seemed to be in music, especially working in the radio station. There was a TV station at my school, but the radio station was way more popping than the TV station because there were just way more people with CDs coming out of their, the hustle in Florida for me was music, and that wasn't my hustle. Like, that wasn't what I wanted to do. So I think it was like junior year to senior year in college, I was just telling everybody, I'm going to move to LA. Didn't no plan. Yeah. I had no really idea of how it was going to happen, but I was telling everybody. And I think it was kind of a accountability and encouragement for myself. Like, at least if I keep saying it, maybe I'll figure out a way. But if I am afraid to even voice it, I don't think anything's going to move.
Yeah.
And really what happened was that when my cousin was like, she's going to move to LA, my grandmother told her, like, hey, Tiff wants to move to LA. You two should move together. But she didn't.
She didn't actually know that was your plan.
She wouldn't have said it if I didn't tell her. Like, if I didn't tell everyone around me with no plan of how it was going to happen, but like, I want to move to California and I want to make movies. Because that's what everybody says. I mean, shoot, like, I watch YouTube videos all day of filmmakers or whatever. Like, moving to LA is the dream. Like, I just kind of mimicked what other people were saying.
Yeah.
But it was like, that's, to me, is the Mecca. You either move to New York or you move to LA to make something happen.
Yeah, this is where all the opportunities are. You got to be here.
Hollywood.
Yeah.
Like, that's where you go. And I actually took a trip to LA with my ex-boyfriend. He was my boyfriend at the time. But like it was junior year. We came to LA for like a week. And I was just
stars in your eyes.
I mean, we went to we saw the stars on we saw. There was a VH1 show that was being filmed on Santa Monica Pier that we just so happened to see. And the lighting guy, like, I ended up being in the back, just, stars in the eyes, like you said, just looking at everything.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing the lighting guy, and I was like, hey, like, this is so cool. Like, I don't live here, but I want to move to LA one day. Like, this is really dope. How did you get this job or whatever? And he was like, it's union. He was, like, pretty chill, but he talked to me. He wasn't like, kid, I'm working, get out of here.
Yeah.
And he gave me the call sheet for that day. And it was just like this weird thing of like, I saved it because I was just like, this is my first week in LA ever. It's my first set I've ever seen. I've never seen a production. And you gave me this call sheet. It was something about it. It was just like, you're going to be here. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to describe, but it's just a moment where it's just like, this can happen.
Yeah.
This can actually be real.
Yeah.
And I think seeing how nice he was too opened up my idea to like, people out here might not be terrible. Yeah. Like, they might actually talk to me and try to help me or be more open to this newbie who wants to come to LA and follow her dream.
Yeah. I think what it comes down to, and it's a lot of what you're touching on, and I had a previous guest on the podcast talk about this meme, and it was really good. It's like, for instance, if you're driving and on the side of the road you see somebody with their hood up on their car, it means that their car is broken down, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to stop. Almost every time you're going to see the hood up, people are going to keep driving, nothing happens. But if you're driving and you see somebody in the middle of an intersection out pushing their car, trying to get it out of the way, you're going to see everybody stop their car.
Yeah.
People are going to, I've seen it happen in LA, like guys are just hopping out of their trucks. They're like pushing this car. It's like people want to help those who are trying to better themselves. It's kind of like what we were talking about before the podcast of like, you got to do it, you know, like there's only so much motivation you can listen to. So I think like from the outside looking in, people think LA, it's so cutthroat, it's so competitive, everybody there is a dreamer, like everyone just wants to make it. But it's like, you can make it if you're willing to do it. Like if you're willing to just keep pushing your car, people see you, people want to cheer you on. Nobody wants to like actually see somebody fall on their face. It's just that what happens is you get a lot of people that talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. And so then you have this big idea of like, oh, LA is just a bunch of people trying to become somebody.
Yeah. When
you get people that like yourself who actually put forth the work, do what they need to do, are good people about it, want to see other people succeed, is good energy.
Yeah.
It's like that's what it's all about.
Most critics, I mean, I'm sure Gary Vee said this, but other people have too. Like most critics are just like they didn't do it. They didn't get it, right? So like when you're saying like it's not a good city or, you know, not a lot of people make it or whatever, it's probably hearing it from someone who tried and didn't quite get their dream. And it's interesting because like people, to me, I always think people are always doing their best. And they always want to do their best, even if subconsciously, like, they might do something really mean or say something really mean or, like, cut you off or whatever like that. I truthfully believe, like, when someone's bitter or angry or upset, it's because something happened to them that made them bitter, angry, or upset. It's not you. It's not your pursuit of what you're trying to do. It's something that they went through in their lives. So, like, I mean, for me personally, I've never really had it because, you know, I hear almost every entrepreneur say the people who didn't believe in me. I've never had anyone who came up to me and said, you suck, like you can never do this. I've never had that. It's the internal critic. I think there's half of the people who have people outside of them that hurt them, and then a lot of people internally hurt themselves. Like I just, based on what you're saying, I don't want people to think like everything just completely worked out and it was amazing. From the outside, absolutely. I wanted to quit so many times in the last 5 years. It's going to be 5 years in October that I've lived in LA. I wanted to move back home. I couldn't afford rent. I couldn't afford rent a few months my first year here. I couldn't, you know, like my cousin would, we would go out to dinner and she would like, you know, she would have to pay for everything. And it would just suck to be like, I can't even feed myself at this point. Like there was so many times that it was really bad. But like I said, the people around me who were very encouraging and could see the future that I couldn't see, having a family who's just like, we believe in you. Like, we wish you were home. Of course, we miss you. But like, don't come home just because you're afraid. Come home if you want to come home. Don't come home because you're giving up. So I want to also emphasize that too. Like, yes, be a good person. Try really hard and understand that like you are going to fail a lot. It doesn't mean that it's a permanent failure or it's a permanent fall or like a, like, you know, for these 2 weeks, like I remember I told my brother there was a week I remember or a day that like I had like maybe, I don't know, however much I had in my bank account, I could either Uber to the next gig or I could eat. And I had to Uber to the next gig. You know what I mean? Like it's the truthful, it's a real struggle, especially if you don't have a family necessarily that can back you, right? Like my family's comfortable, but they couldn't afford to pay my rent every month in LA. So I saved up for 3 months worth of rent and food before I moved out here. The 4th month I couldn't get it, and then the 5th month I could. So there was a lot of ups and downs, but I didn't move out here with no money, with no plan. It's just you can only plan so much. And so it's not giving up too.
And eventually you got to put yourself into that environment, because you could sit in Florida for 2 years just saving up, but it's like at some point you got to get out there and try putting your name out there and see what falls into place.
Absolutely.
So after that 4 months of like you just like throwing your name out there, you land this opportunity with the Sparks. You're a photographer, you're the videographer, junior social media manager. God. You're now mixing in like a past passion of basketball with your current passion of like creating. At the time, did it feel like a dream job?
It did. My mom, so when I was 16, my 16th birthday, we were in North Carolina. We had like a family trip or something like that. It was like a family reunion. And after we got back from the family reunion, we did our first ever vision boards. I had never done one before. My mom was like, I want everyone to write down what they want, their dreams or whatever. And apparently, when I was 16, I cut out a basketball out of a magazine and put like play with the WNBA at the very top, right? And there was a lot of different stuff that were basketball related on this basketball. And when I got the job, I sent my mom a picture and she sent me the basketball, like saying like, want to play for the WNBA. And it was just a crazy moment of like, I didn't even remember writing that down. But to now be working with that team, amazing.
Yeah.
Never thought it would happen. Yeah. It was a very hard job. Yeah. Like, let me make sure everyone understands. Every job that I have had has been horribly hard in a sense of like, you don't know what you're doing because you've never done it before. Yeah. So like, I didn't understand the expectations. When I did their social media, I was an intern. I worked for free for them for a long time before I got a contract. And I had to figure out with other gigs how I was going to make enough money. But when I got that contract, I was like, thank God. Who knew that I need to work for free for 4 to 6 months to work for 4 months for their actual season? So it was a dream come true, but it still was really hard and really kept me up sometimes at night. Like, what am I doing? Is this worth it? Like, every job I've had, I felt that. So I just want to keep saying that because when you read it on paper, it sounds really good. But when you're alone in your room at night and you are like trying to figure out how you're going to survive next week, it really sucks. And you really have to like hold on to something that's going to make you go like, it's going to work out. It's going to be okay. I'm going to figure this out. And like I said before, the people around me seeing the greatness inside of me and not letting me quit was a really big part of the reason why you and I are in front of each other. And I'm going to be celebrating my 5th year in October.
Wow. I mean, even today now with working with Lewis for like the last 3.5 years, do you ever have these doubt moments or like questions I mean, obviously it's like a great opportunity. Yeah. Obviously it's a great opportunity working with him, but like I have these. I was trying to think of a way to describe it, and I thought of it this morning when I was running. I know you're a runner too, so I know you're on that run.
Very recent runner. I suck at running.
But what I've told myself is that it's like if you go to I don't know, a carnival, right, and they have like these games with like balloons. I have these 2 balloons in my life. I have yellow, brightness, happiness, like I know I got this, I got to keep doing it. Yeah. And then I have these black ones that just randomly pop up, and they, even with where I'm at today, I have these self-doubt moments of like, am I doing the right thing? It's that inner person. Yeah. And so I'm like looking at myself as like I'm playing that dark game and I'm just trying to pop all the black ones. Even where you're at today, do you ever have like these like just little moments of just, wait, should I be doing this? Should I be doing something else?
Yeah. I mean, it comes up a lot when other people ask me. I never really, it comes up a lot because the first question people ask me is, what's it like to be in the room? The second question people ask me is like, what do you create on your own? What's your own, what's something that you do for you? And that question typically comes from other creators. I've never heard someone who's like a, any other type of follower of his ask me that question. I don't feel like, it's hard to describe. I don't have regrets from working with him for the last 3.5 years. I think that there's always going to be a pull to do something that tells my perspective, because he grew up in Ohio. I grew up in New York, North Carolina, and Florida. He's a 6'4" white male. I'm a 5'5" black female. The questions that we ask people will be very different. Not because we're not good human beings, but because we didn't grow up the same way. We don't experience life the same way. So sometimes I'm in the room and I'm like, that was a really good question, but I would have asked this. So I get these ideas all the time. And I think that's just what makes me a human being. It's what makes me a creator. I'm sure anyone listening to the podcast goes, that's a cool question. I wish you would ask this, you know? So it always pops up. But I think, like, I don't know. I think when it happens for me, when I decide, like, I'll either become a part-time creator for my own content or a full-time creator for my own content, that it will be the right time. Yeah. Because I feel like working with him was like a boot camp. It's like, I mean, I have learned so much about myself. I've forgiven a lot of things with my past. I've learned how to speak up properly. This is the thing. When you disagree with someone who's got so much money in the bank and is technically your client, somewhat semi your boss, and you can go to him with a very fair argument of why something's not going to work and he listens to you, that's huge. Yeah. Like, I can negotiate, I can talk to people, I can do contracts and stuff, not just from working with him, but working with a lot of different other entrepreneurs and lifestyle people. Like, I have learned a different level of confidence, right? Like, coming from high school to college was a certain level of confidence. Moving from Florida to LA was another level of confidence. Being able to feel now that I am on an equal playing field with someone like him and any other entrepreneur I've worked with is a whole other level of confidence I couldn't have gotten even in the first year that I was working with him. Because the reason why that was the worst year of my life is because I never communicated. I never said, hey guys, I'm dying. I'm working 60, 70 hours a week. I need help. Yeah. It wasn't towards the end of the year that we were doing a course that they ever hired an editor for the first time to support me. And even then, this could be interesting, but like, they thought that she helped me, but really she didn't understand how to cut. So I ended up going back and recutting what she did myself. I always was like, she's great because right now she works with us and she's amazing. But at that time, it was she didn't have a long enough time to learn what I was doing to really support. So I had to do it myself. But then when they saw like, oh my God, we're going to need more people if we're really going to get this done, it opened up that kind of door. And then I was like, oh, I just need to say something. Yeah. Like, it was like high school. Like, it was the same problem repeating itself a little bit in a different way. Here's someone who I feel very intimidated by, who I feel like has had so much more success than me. I'm in the room, like we talked about, with a bunch of other people who have had so much more success than me. Who am I to say that I can't do this, or that I can't handle this, or that I'm really suffering right now? And then when it started changing and like they're really asking me questions and I'm like, oh, like they care. They really do want to know that I'm okay, and they don't want me to be working every weekend. I was just choosing to because I believe that's what I had to do to earn the spot, because I never thought in that first year that it was too much work. I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought I couldn't handle it, not that they were asking of me, asking too much of me. Yeah. And now I'm like I said, 4 other people doing the exact same amount of work that I was doing. It's like, wow, I just needed to communicate that. And now, I'm the post-production coordinator for those guys. So I shoot and I watch and approve and critique every video before it goes out on the School of Greatness. I'm project managing for the podcast team that just focuses on the audio on the website. I'm overseeing them. I'm overseeing the team that helps us with social media and like a lot of those different things. So now moving from just I'm going to be this hired videographer to now being truthfully a video producer for the team, a creative director for the team of greatness. It's like, I can't regret that. In the middle, I was like, man, I should be doing my own stuff. What? And now I'm like, if I truly wanted to start a business, I understand how a business runs. I understand the difference between working with the WNBA, who's a small business but corporate funded, and working for an entrepreneur who has to fund themselves and has to have 4 to 7 sources of income to actually fund having a team. I know the difference now. Yeah. I know what that's like, and I know what it's like to stick it out for a long time and not just quit after 6 months. Yeah. So there is so much that I learned that there's no way I can ever go back and regret it. Yeah. It's like, if I choose to be here for another 6 months, if I choose to be here for another 6 years, it will be something that I choose and will always be the right choice because I chose it. If I choose to leave and do my own thing, or part-time do my own thing and stay in some capacity, it will be the right choice because I chose it. Yeah. So that's what I've learned, even with working with him. There's no right or wrong. There's no good or bad. It's a choice. And then you can make another choice, another choice. And when I started running in the morning, right, like my 5 a.m. runs, that was my choice to put myself first. That was my choice of like, I'm going to be healthy because I wake up every morning, even to this day, the first thing I think about is work, what I need to do for that day, and all these things on my brain. No one's going to tell me to take care of myself. No one's going to tell me you're starting to get overweight. No one's going to tell me like, hey, Tiff, like you need to sleep more. It's completely up to me. And like I said, working with Lewis, getting closer and closer and closer to him, No one tells him to go play handball and try to and be on the Olympic team. No one tells him that he's got to go take 2 weeks to go to Hawaii because he's got to think about the creative stuff for this business. God. He's got to put himself in those positions. He's got to step away and become the creator over and over and over again to make the business really thrive. And I'm watching him just like I said, I truly don't believe he's better than me, and I don't believe I'm better than him. I feel so equal to him. His name is on my paychecks, but I feel very equal to him in the sense of like, after hearing hundreds of interviews, what do I need to do better as a person? Where can I grow? Running in the morning. Now I'm starting to write in the morning before I work. I get to choose. I get to make my destiny. And the thing about all these people who I'm sitting in front of and filming, that's what they had to decide too. I choose this. This boss or this way of working for other people isn't supportive for me as a person. I need to do my own thing, and I need to keep showing up every day to make it successful and make it and create the life that I want to have. So it's a lot. I mean, I know I can go off on these tangents, but I think
I love it though. It's so there's just so much in it. I don't even know where to start. I'm just like so interested because it's like, first of all, real shortly, like, what pulls you in to apply for the job? I want to make sure we touch on that because I know you weren't even familiar with who Lewis Howes was at the time.
Did not know who he was.
And you got suggested from the job was passed along from, I think, a friend of yours, Yolanda or something.
Yeah. So like,
what gets you to apply first off before you don't even know who Lewis is really?
I think that was part of the reason why I did it. I wasn't intimidated. I didn't know who he was. Mm-hmm. So I had followed Chase Jarvis. He was the first person in my realm of self-improvement because he's a photographer, and he kind of moved from photography to self-improvement and business knowledge. And when I was working that production job in Florida, he was the first person I watched. I watched interviews with Jasmine Star, who I can't believe I'm friends with now. Like, it was like Gary Vee, who I can't believe I ended up interviewing. Like, I watched Chase Jarvis live. Like I said, after 4 months, you know how to do your job. So I would work for my poor boss. I would work for 4 hours and be done with an 8-hour day. So the next few hours, I was on YouTube watching these interviews. And so I knew a bit about the space, but not so much the people. When I got here, right, I'm working with LA Sparks. Like I told you, I was interning. So I was still going to business events, and I was still finding a lot of freelance jobs because I didn't have enough money for rent. Like, I had to make the rent up somehow to stay in this internship. Mm-hmm. And so I met this woman, Yolanda, at an event. She was she does a lot of different things, but she was working with a few people like Ramit Sethi and a few other people. Like, she was kind of in that world. And I told myself when I was going to go to these events, I never printed a business card. I told myself that I was going to not meet 10 people. I was going to have 2 good conversations with people. I wasn't going to pass out my business card. I was like, whoever I'm going to talk to, they're going to remember me after we finish talking, and I want to remember them. So Yolanda happened to be one of the people that I met at one of these business events. She was telling me her story. I was telling her my story about working with the WNBA, moving to LA, the whole thing we just spent, all this time talking about. Yeah. And a month after we talked, she sent me an email and said, hey, I know, you are looking for work and everything like that. This guy, Lewis Howes, he's got a job I think you would be really good for. I kind of met him this one time. I at least have his email address. I'm happy to email intro you to each other. And she sent me the Facebook post that he made about hiring a videographer. And I was like, cool, sure. No big deal. Thanks. I appreciate it. I didn't understand because at that time also, he didn't have that many followers on Facebook. So he's grown a lot in the last 3.5 years. She does the email introduction, but before she was like, he's going to reach out to you, but before you send anything, don't just send your resume. Send like some video clip or something so he can know how you've done stuff, right? And I was like, all right, cool. And in my head, I was just like, I don't really know what to do. I'll just look this guy's stuff up on YouTube. So similar like I did with the LA Sparks, where I spent those 5 hours putting together that content that she had on her phone. He had like Tim Ferriss. He had he just had a few people that he interviewed every once in a while on his YouTube channel. So I pulled all those interviews and I made a 2.5-minute mashup of what's your definition of greatness, is what he asks at the end of every episode. And I sent that to him, and I don't know if this is ethical, but he posted it on his Facebook before he didn't even respond to me. I sent my resume, I sent the video, and he posted it on his Facebook. And the first day it was up, it got like close to 30,000 views. And then he called me. I was like, so he tested it, which is smart. But I was just like, is my video up there? And then he called me and he was like, hey, you know, he wanted to know more about me, but he brought me in for an interview. And it was the most intimidating interview I have ever been in.
Just you and him?
Just me and him. His assistant, Sarah, who is a good friend of mine now, because obviously we've been working together for a long time, was there too. But like, he's 6'4". He's very tall. And he makes direct eye contact with you. Like, he doesn't, to the point where it makes you very, like, he doesn't break it. So as you're talking, he is just staring at you
the whole time.
And so, and you know, for me, I think being a very present person who can kind of like read what people are thinking, and you can too, when someone makes a twitch or body movement or whatever, they're reacting to what you're saying, right? So you can kind of tell if you're doing a good job or not. He didn't move. He just stared at me with no flinch, no blinking, no like smile or anything. So I'm like, am I saying these things right? Am I saying anything wrong? Like, just trying to answer his questions. But there was 2 questions that he asked me. One of them I remember, he was saying like, why do you think there's not that many women behind the camera? Like, why do you think, because I was the only woman who applied for that job. So he posted on his Facebook, but according to him, he said no other female had applied. It was only guys. And I told him, I was like, and no one had ever asked me this question. So I was like, let me think about it. But I was like, I think that men tend to open up more in front of women than other men. And like, it's more intimidating for a guy to be open and vulnerable when there's a woman behind the camera as opposed to another guy. I don't know where this answer came from, probably from reading a bunch of books, but I was like, that's my opinion. And my second part to that answer was, I also think that a lot of women aren't behind the camera because they don't see a lot of other women behind the camera. Now there's a lot more representation, but for me, I don't remember growing up seeing a woman behind the camera to admire. Like, be like, oh my God, I can't believe she's doing this.
She's the director. She's the one making that commercial.
Catherine Bigelow was the first female director to win an Oscar in like 2009, 2010 for Hurt Locker. I was already out of, like, that wasn't a time where I was really paying attention to know that or whatever. But like, it's so few and far between. To even be nominated and then to win an Oscar. It was probably way later than that. I think I graduated college already when she won her Oscar. But anyway, the point is, like, there wasn't any representation. And so I think that's the reason why you didn't get a lot of applications from women, and also why there's not a lot of women behind the camera when it comes to men being in front of the camera. He didn't say a word. But he nodded. So I got a reaction. Like, out of this 20-minute, 30-minute interview, that was the only time I really felt like I got a real reaction from him. And I wasn't saying it to get a reaction necessarily, but I was like, I'll take that's it. My answer. That's how I feel it was. And he was like, all right, cool. Well, we got 2 interviews next week. You can come in and film them. If they look good and I think it's a good quality, we'll keep you and we'll negotiate the contract. If it's not so good, we'll pay you for the day and then we'll just move on. And so my first 2 interviews were I think it was Esther Perel, a relationship coach and like counselor, therapist, very interesting content, and Jason Silva from Brain Games. Those were my first 2 interviews. And then Lisa Nichols from The Secret. Like, it was just a very beginning interesting week for me to start with him. I cut them up, I sent it to him, and it was, I mean, I look at it now and I'm like, oh, I could have done X, Y, and Z better. But at that time, it was the best that I could do, and it was good enough for what he needed. And after 3.5 years, it's grown a lot. The podcast doesn't look anything like those videos from 3.5 years ago, but I grew into the position, and I think that was another reason why I was hired. I wasn't someone who had 10 plus years of experience who was going to charge him like a crazy amount of money, right? And who also would come in with a
this is how we have to do it.
idea of what we're going to do. I'm coming in as someone who's like, I have the camera tell me where to point. I'll do whatever you need me to do. And I think he could see that too, because he knew that with my experience level, I was gonna have to learn a lot, and there's no one else who does video production in that team, so it was gonna be a lot of self growth in addition to having that entrepreneur thinker mindset. That's like, where can I grow here? Where can I grow here? What can we do different? Researching cameras, researching things, because no one on that team was gonna tell me how to do it. I was gonna have to figure it out. But at least he must have saw somewhere in me in that interview that I was willing to grow in that kind of way.
How many people were on the team at the time to now there is today? In 3.5 years.
That part is for video production, or just for
this one. I'm letting the listeners know now. This one's getting into the weirdness part of the podcast, because I'm so curious about like the details of this podcast, of how you guys operate. Like, how many people? I know he runs this out of where he lives, I believe, or I could be completely wrong.
In his studio.
Yeah, is this studio part of his apartment? But he also has, I've seen like in other footage, like they have the studio room. He has like an office room where there's other like team members. So I guess more of just what's that operation look like right now? You don't have to go back to 3.5 years ago, but there's editors and there's all these other people that are part of it.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I think with him and any other entrepreneur I've worked with, it always changes. Yeah. So like right now, yes, there's way more video production people. There's a lot more people behind the scenes, but it's still intimate. It's still small business mindset. It's still like, we're going to do an amazing job where, like me, I'm a multi-hyphenate, right? There's technically 5 different things that I do, right? So instead of hiring 5 people, you got someone who's like, they call it like a unicorn person who's doing these 5 things. Do it all. So it's not, I know it's not to compare it from 3.5 years ago. It doesn't look the same, but it's just the kind of people that we hire. So there's more people in production. There's more people that I get to be the boss of, as opposed to trying to do it all myself. But I don't think in 6 months it'll look the same either. So there's a lot of people who focus on the podcast. That's still our number one. No matter what we do, the podcast will always be the number one driver, because that's the free content that we give to people that Lewis started 6 years ago with the purpose of, I can't understand school. I'm not good at school. I want other people who learn like me just from asking questions to be able to learn. So the podcast will always be the meat and gravy and all the things in the business. The other things like Inner Circle, the membership that he has, Mastermind, Summit of Greatness, the event that we have in Ohio, all these things will kind of grow if they need to grow, and not if they don't need to. So it's hard to answer that question, because in my internal team, it has grown a lot. But on the other parts of the business, it's kind of an up and down. It depends on what we're focused on that month, because that's the whole thing too. No one is like, everybody is sort of it's like when I was working with the Sparks, it's seasonal. So if we need you for Summit of Greatness, which is in October, you'll probably be there for 4 months. But if we need you for the podcast, which is all year, you'll probably be there for a year. So that's the other thing too. I think it's hard to describe unless you're in it, but I'm glad you're asking, because I'm hoping that eventually, without breaching any contracts, I can explain to people how it looks different from a typical corporate job. Yeah. Because it's not the same. Everyone has to be pretty frugal, but at the same time, you're making a way bigger impact than a lot of these corporations who can't quite figure it out because they've got too many people who are doing little things, who aren't necessarily innovating every 3 months of how can we make this different? How can we change? How can we grow? With Lewis's podcast, like I told you, every job I've had, I learned in the first 3 to 4 months how to do it. I didn't understand how to do my job for a year and a half, because we changed it every 3 months. So like
constantly, by the time you actually get good at it, it's like
something else happens. And so like it took literally a year and a half for me to understand what the job was, and really it was not to be attached to what the job is. Who is even around me, or what even my role in the team. Because if one day Lewis is like, I'm done with video, then he may not need me anymore. And I've also had to be like, that's okay, because I did a lot when I was there, and whatever I do next will be amazing too. But it's sort of like, that's the kind of business that we're in. You almost like, you want to be attached enough to do a really good job, but you don't want to be so attached that if everything goes away,
leaves, you're screwed. You
don't have anything else going on.
Do you still sit in on every interview?
Oh yeah, I film every podcast. The only ones I didn't, if he travels right now, I don't. Okay. So like Maisie Williams from Game of Thrones.
Oh, you weren't there for that. Was in London, right?
But shout out to Taylor Jensen. He's amazing. He traveled with him. He's a photographer mainly, but he filmed it. And there's a handful that I don't film, but if it's in the studio, like in LA, I film it.
Wow.
Yeah. And Kobe Bryant wasn't in the studio, but I filmed Kobe.
You got to film that one?
That will always be my... When we interview The Rock, that needs to be my interview. Yeah, I feel like I've earned that. Yeah. No one else gets to do The Rock. Absolutely not.
It's only a matter of time before he gets The Rock. I always see Louis like chiming in on his comments on Instagram. Yeah. So to me, it's just a matter of time.
The Rock, Jim Carrey, and one other person, like his Will Smith.
Those are his top 3 right now?
Yeah, that's who he wants. Absolutely.
I love how you know that, too. Of course. You have to know that, right?
Oh, yeah.
I have to know that. I mean, like, that's the thing, right? Like, you've sat in on these interviews, and I know we touched on it earlier, but, like, Kobe Bryant, Gary Vee, Scooter Braun, Tony Robbins, Tony Hawk, Steve Aoki. What do you think is making these to sum it all up, like, what's making these people be that top 1%?
I think we talked about it before the podcast, consistency.
Yeah.
Right. And being smart enough or self-aware enough to evaluate what's working, what's not working every 3 to 6 months.
So constantly just reassessing.
Constantly innovating. So it sounds weird because I used to hate when people say, we're always innovating, we're always changing. Because to me, you're not saying anything. Like, if you say we're always doing something new, you're not telling me what you're doing. I can't take that statement and do anything with it. But if you tell me that every 3 to 6 months, we sit down with everything that we've been doing, we look at the numbers, we see this has been bringing in income, this has been losing money, but it's making a good impact. This has been bringing in money. A lot of people seem to like it in our business, but we're not making an impact. Like, you're measuring, constantly measuring every piece of your business for 3 to 6 months and consistently posting and creating content. That to me is what they do. Whether they're creators or whether they're managers, Scooter Braun, whether they're Tony Robbins in his business. I'm not just talking about lifestyle entrepreneurs. I'm talking about that's the way they think. They are I still don't understand how Louis... I try to be that aware of the business, but it is always on his mind all the time. And like, he's constantly, every time he sees something, he's inspired to do something else in the business. And we've tried a lot of stuff that doesn't fit the brand, and then we'll just move on. But also not being so attached that, like, if I start a podcast, it's gotta work out. Maybe you really don't like podcasting, and you tried it at least for 3 months, realized you didn't like it, and you can move and try something different. But that's what I would say. It's the consistency and constantly evaluating, like being attached to the numbers.
Yeah.
If this is something that's supposed to make you money, is it making you money? Is this something that you had a goal to make a certain amount of impact? If you're not there, are you closer than you were 3 months ago? And that was a business mindset I never understood. I never had until now. Now I get how to make money. Before, and I think this is what every video creator suffers with, we don't know how to price ourselves. We don't know how much money it takes. I was at this conference a couple months ago where they were talking to wedding photographers, and the guy asked him, like, do you know how much it costs a year for you to, like, if right now someone said, how much is it for you to live for a year where you're at right now? How much money and how many gigs you would need to make a living? None of them can answer the question, because we live so month to month. We live week to week, and we don't think about, in 6 months, let me stop. How much money did I make in the last 6 months? How does that compare to last year where I'm at? What clients brought in the least amount of money for the most amount of effort, and which clients brought in a whole lot of money with a little amount of effort? I'm going to stick more to this, the least effort and more money, and not to the other side. stopping and evaluating and treating yourself as a business if you're a freelancer is something I never thought about until I worked with him.
You're always constantly getting to the next job.
You're in survival mode.
Yeah.
And I have learned how to not be in survival mode and be in this place where I'm like, I don't think in scarcity anymore. Like, if I don't do this job, I'm not going to eat this week. I used to think that way. And I used to take a lot of jobs that were really terrible because I was just like, I just need this money. And now I'm like, I mean, yes, I've earned a pretty good reel. I mean, I got a lot of cool celebrities on my reel or whatever. Yeah. But like at the same time, if someone comes to me right now with a really cool gig and a really terrible price, I can say no. And before, I thought if I said no, I'm missing out on something. Now I know for a fact if I say no to something, there's something better around the corner. And I just want to make sure that freelancers understand that if you're not stopping doing the numbers on your business, you will for the next 5 years, you will be in survival mode. But if you actually stop and you go through, treat yourself like a business, read business books, understand your numbers, like understand how much net worth, how much gross did you make? You know what I mean? What was the actual net? Like all the profit, did you make a profit? Did you actually lose money because the cost of your equipment and the cost of your time didn't actually equal out in what you priced and charged? How would you know unless you stop and evaluate it?
Yeah.
But if you're just thinking, I just need $100 right now, I got to figure out how to make $100 right now, and you stayed like that for over a year, you will consistently be that person who's always like, I just got to make $100 right now.
Yeah.
So watching that, seeing the numbers, seeing how a business runs, like that's another sort of like piece I never thought I would have learned working for him and understanding. You know, it's a small business, but it's really an entrepreneur. This is the way he thinks, and 6 or 7 sources of income. You need that if you're going to hit a certain number. If you just want to hit like maybe a few $100,000 a year, you could probably do one thing really well. But depending a product that takes off or whatever, but like if you're a lifestyle entrepreneur or an entrepreneur, you need to be thinking, is there 2 to 3 ways that I can be making money as opposed to just one?
Yeah, because you don't want to be just heart and relationship on that one income.
And you got to try something new. Like I said, maybe podcasting is your thing, maybe YouTube is your thing, maybe you go all in on IGTV and Instagram, and all of a sudden people are watching your stuff. You're constantly testing and trying something new, but you have to stop. Look at the numbers, what worked and what didn't work, and decide where to move. You can't keep moving, and that means you're never really growing.
Yeah.
Not really.
How like far out are you guys planning some of these guests? Like, or is this kind of week to week?
It's week to week. There's sometimes that I interview 6 guests. There's sometimes I interview 1. It's week to week.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to me because I see it, like I'll see all these podcasts roll out, and then I see he's traveling. I'm like, how is he able to balance like getting some in?
That's where all my job comes in. So if we film 6, then it's my job to put it on the schedule. If they have a book release, if they have some kind of program that they're coming out with, I got to time it correctly, and then I'm assigning these videos to editors and setting deadlines in the calendar every week. I just had a meeting with all of our editors yesterday morning, like telling them what I think the next 3 months will look like. Don't hold me to it because Lewis will change his mind, but this is what I think the next 3 months will look like, and trying to give them an outlook for it. So that's why you have to have a good like organizer and manager and someone who's like really doing your schedule well. For him, he has Sarah, who's just amazing. She plans these things, so she's like, okay, cool, we need, for the next 2 weeks, we need a lot so that the next 2 weeks he can travel and do his thing.
Oh, I see.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we'll book it all. We try to book as much as we can in a week, not knowing if he's going to go somewhere the next week.
Is there a big funnel process for assessing if a guest is qualified or not? Because I would imagine just him. He gives a green light whether it's somebody or not.
He literally, like, this is like a thing on our team. We keep saying, we're not the school of average. We're the school of greatness. So, like, he's the last and final say. Like, people might come through. I mean, people reach out for the podcast all the time to be on the podcast. People reach out through PR groups and all those different things. But, like, even if it makes it past a couple of people on our team and like we really like them, he will always be the final decision. He'll never interview a guest he doesn't want to.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but he's the final person. And I'll be honest with you, I'm sure he said this, 90% probably or 80% of the people he made a relationship with first. So it's not like it's a PR group sending us a bunch of celebrities. That's why he's always traveling. That's why his number one superpower is meeting people and building relationships. Everything else is like we can fill in the gaps for him.
Yeah.
But he's really good at making people like building relationships with people. Like figuring out what their biggest thing is that they need and seeing if he can support them in some way. He's a big giver. So like I've never met anyone who's met him and not liked him because he is constantly like, what can I help you with? What do you need?
And it also helps create the best content so that when he brings them in to sit down to have
There's
the conversation.
already a relationship.
Yeah, I know. That's why I try to spend even like that first 15, 20 minutes when people come in. Like I just want to get them warmed up. I want them to know why I started this and like just try to get the juices flowing because I know once this gets rolling, it sometimes it's not even until like the first like until I'm in like 30 or 40 minutes in with them that I'm like, all right, things are flowing, like the convo is just bouncing, you know. So but I think that's really important is just of like making sure that it's more about the relationship than them just coming in telling the story and then like leaving. And it's just a win-win-win for all of them.
Right.
Do you, now that you're you do more of like the overseeing, more of a leadership position, do you like that? Do you find that it's more stressful? Because obviously now you go back 3.5 years ago, it's all on you. You know you can get things done in a timely manner. So now we have to hope somebody gets this done. I have to hope that the quality is there. Do you like the leadership position aspect?
I like the leadership position aspect. I think that's the other thing, right? Like them even saying like, okay, Tiff, you're going to run the editors. You're going to be the producer. That's another thing of someone seeing greatness that I didn't see. In my head, I never thought that I would be managing a team after 3 years of being with him. And now I'm like, oh, wow. Like, shoot. I technically, everything I'm doing is what someone would do if they had their own production company. Yeah. From start to finish. I'm shooting the content. I'm uploading and sorting the content. I'm planning the content, and I'm reviewing it before it's over, like before it's sent out and actually distributed. So from shooting to distribution, that's all my job. Yeah. And so I like it in a sense of like I never knew I'd do it. Is it harder? No, it's harder to do it by myself. Yeah. Like, it's way harder to do everything alone than to have a crew. And I realized how much I like being around people. Because everyone we brought in, I brought in. They didn't hire them, I did. So, like, when we brought in editors, I literally, obviously I talk a long time. I would be on the phone with people for like 30 to 40 minutes just talking to them about their lives. Because I don't necessarily care about your skill level. I taught everyone who worked on, no one knew how to cut a podcast. I taught everyone how to cut the podcast and how to do it in a timely manner because I know how to do that. I cared that if it's 3 a.m. and we're on a tight deadline, will I want to be on the phone with you at 3 o'clock in the morning? Are you that good of a person where like, I don't want every week to be a last minute week. I don't want every week to, and I do my best to be as ahead as possible. But like, if it comes down to crunch time, are you someone who's going to crunch with me and be happy about it and not be complaining about it the next week? So every editor that we brought in, I filtered, I made sure that they were good enough for the team. And so when I work with them, when I get on the phone with them, like it feels like I'm just working with my family. Yeah. I curated that. So it's not hard. It's harder when there's a week where Lewis is traveling and we don't have a podcast necessarily recording. I'm like, shoot, I got to make sure my family eats. What work can I give them? You know what I mean? So we'll have Inner Circle and a bunch of marketing videos and stuff that we do. But like when it comes to just managing them, because I chose my family, it's not hard at all. And I think it's also opened the idea of like for anyone out there who's listening, and you too, when you're a one-person crew, it almost becomes so natural to you that it's like you have to go through this phase of like, what is it like to work in a group again of people? Can I let go of the edit? Can I let go of the creativity and just review it and let this person create, as opposed to this needs to look exactly how I would do it if I was editing. Yeah. So that was a transition for me, but I love it now. I don't want to go back. I don't want to shoot and edit everything by myself. I like other people being able to bring in different aspects. The videos always look different because literally if all 3 of my editors cut the exact same clip, I can tell who did it because they all have a different way of doing things. And so I love that. I love having people. I love not having all that pressure on myself, and I love being able to trust other people and let them, because like you said, like to me there's enough for everybody. Yeah. When you come to LA, you think there isn't enough, you think there's too many people. I don't want to hire another editor or another shooter. Me, I want to hire another shooter. I love being in the podcast, But at the end of the day, I'm like, what if I get sick for a week and we have like 4 people scheduled? I want somebody else to be able to come and do that and do a good job. I don't believe, like I said, that's how you move from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. If I let you come in and do something great, that's great. You're not taking anything away from me by being great. I want you to be better than me so that like
you're learning
and I can also, there's no pressure. Yeah. If I come in and if you come in and you're a better editor than me, awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
That means not only I found you, I still get the credit, and like you're going to do a great job and I don't have to. Yeah. But I know that like if all the editors were gone next week, I could still do everything that we need to do.
If you want to scale, you got to bring in the more people, the merrier. And to a certain extent, obviously, you don't want people that aren't filling their role, but I think if you really want to get things done efficiently in a timely manner and not like that first year when you're stressed out and you're overwhelmed and you're working 60, 70 hours a week, you need to bring in people.
You'll be shocked. Most of the people who come in on the podcast, most business owners who are entrepreneurs, the hardest thing for them to do is to grow a team because they're so used to doing it on their own. Yeah. They're so used to not depending on other people, and they're scared. Had to depend on themselves for so long that like now I'm going to let this one piece go to somebody else. Honestly, it's the hardest thing for them is to delegate. So I'm like, shoot, if I can learn this on someone else's dime, how to delegate and to do this, you know, if my next 5 years looks like something else, at least I learned how to trust people and trust myself, knowing that if I bring them in, I can filter that. I can tell if I'm sitting across from a good person. Yeah. And if they go through ups and downs, like, that's okay too. I'm human too. But like, can I approach them with compassion over like, why didn't you get the job done?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when people work with me, I want them to feel like they were able to do what they love to do for a fair price.
Yeah.
Like that's what I want. People will call dibs sometimes, the editors. Like if, you know, when we had Kobe and stuff, they're like, I want that one. You know what I mean? And we're going to have some cool guests in June. There's a lot of cool guests that I'm so excited about. Mm-hmm. And they're calling dibs already on the people that they want to edit, you know? And I'm like, cool. I love that you can do that. But at the end of the day, if they're not available and they're like, okay, I moved on to another client, I want them to feel like when I worked for the School of Greatness, when I worked for Lewis Howes, I had such a great learning experience and I felt so good. And I felt for the first time maybe that like I can come in and create and be creative and get paid well, and that could be my life for the rest of my life. It's not like it has to be this constant struggle. So I just want people to come in and feel good. It's a cool job, and like I said, I didn't think it would exist, but I think every company should have a video producer.
You've heard this question and answer so many times, so I am so curious to hear.
Oh God!
But what is your definition of greatness?
Man, every time he asks, I think about it. I said it before we got onto the podcast. I found this scripture. I don't remember. I think it might have been in Matthew, but just like I'm butchering it, but like the body is dead without the soul, so is faith without work. My definition of greatness is having faith in yourself, believing in yourself, faith in the people around you, and putting in twice as much work than you think you can to live whatever you want it to live. Whether you choose to be freelance, whether you choose to be an employee and work for a great company you really believe in, whether you choose to like, I need this paycheck to feed my family, so I'm going to do this and make that sacrifice. That to me doesn't matter. Your title doesn't matter. Who you work for doesn't matter. I've met enough quote unquote great people to know that some people look really great and aren't that great when the camera's not rolling. So that whole like idealism and titles and celebrity thing doesn't quite affect me like it did before. All I want to know is that you have faith in yourself and other people around you and in the world, right? And you put in twice as much work to get to where you want to go in life. That to me is the definition of greatness.
Yeah. That's a Lewis Howes great question. And I think too with that, it's always evolving. Your definition of greatness is always evolving as you learn and you grow, and things that you see and experience in the world, it constantly changes like what you see as greatness. And I love that your mug has greatness on the side of it too.
We got those for one of the mastermind weekends.
That's amazing.
And I was just like, I need that. I kind of took like 2 of them. So was like,
don't let them know. Don't let them know. Don't let them know. What would you say is Tiff Tyler's purpose?
man, good question. So I've been thinking about this for years, even before I moved to LA. My purpose, if I'm being super honest, it's really scary to say out loud, is to bring a voice to women and girls around the world. So I believe whatever I end up doing 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that there's a underrepresentation of women and girls, and there's a connection to me that's sort of missing, where like they see themselves on camera, they see themselves doing great things, and I want to be the person that brings faces and voices and stories of women and young girls to the world to connect humanity. So if you get this crazy great interview from someone who lives in New York, and somehow they connect to someone in London or someone in the Middle East because, oh wow, my dad was like that too, or my family was like that too. Anything that I can do that can connect people across the world to bring humanity together in some sort of sense of love, like that's my purpose. And I think when I did it with the WNBA, it ended up happening. And especially because it's a women's organization. Yeah. And then working with Lewis, like, the podcast has hit over 100 million downloads. I've done, I'm sure, I still have to do the number, but over 100 interviews with him. We've had millions of views on YouTube. It's like I've, through him, been able to impact a lot of men and women. And his audience is still 50-50, 50% men, 50% women, by being able to bring that creation to life, record the audio in a good way, record the video in a very well done, good way. So that's my purpose. If it looks like Lewis Howes in the School of Greatness, or if it looks like Tiff Tyler's XYZ, my purpose is to really connect women and young girls, but just humanity across the world through stories. Yeah. That's really what I feel my purpose is.
And I think you're doing it just from the confidence that you have, the energy that you're bringing, and what you're putting on Instagram. Like, I really do believe that you're in that direction of doing it, because right off media, I mean, I could tell through just like social media and listening to previous podcasts you had been on, but really just like the moment of meeting you and bringing you in here, and just kind of like your energy, and you're smiling, and you're just trying to be you. You're just trying to be who you are. And I'm sure a lot of that still stems back to those early days of with the camera and the family and the band and all that. And so I think you're doing it. I really do. And the energy you're putting out there is just, it's awesome.
Thank you.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Sometimes I'm like, how did I never saw like this becoming what it is and what it's becoming. You know, I'm not at the 100 million downloads just yet. We're going to get there one day, but it's conversations like this to me that I would rather spend my Saturday afternoon than having these types of conversations. Before I get into closing questions, this is when I reverse the role. I allow the guest to ask me any one question. Could be about something we talked about today, something you want to know about me. Usually two rules. One,
there's rules?
Yeah, there's rules. 2 rules. One, It can't be a question that I already asked you today.
Okay.
2, it can't be directly about the podcast. But since you're in the podcast world, if you want to ask about the podcast, go ahead.
Can't be directly about the podcast.
It's my fault. I usually tell the guest beforehand, like,
oh no, it's
before
fine.
we started the podcast, but for whatever reason,
like
this one
said,
slipped.
like being present in the moment, I really like that. So I like less preparation.
Yeah.
Lewis is the same way. He doesn't want to know the questions. So growing up, right? What was something that you thought you were going to be compared to what you are now?
I mean, honestly, what's so interesting is growing up, there wasn't like a true career path. There was never something that I was like, that's the thing, or at least that's what I need to work towards. Except, like, I remember growing up, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer one day. That just sounded cool, but it wasn't a true passion. It wasn't until like maybe high school that I thought maybe, and kind of what I was talking about before the podcast, like maybe corporate's where I want to go. Like, maybe business, like that's where I need to be. I like business. I like marketing. I think wearing suits would be cool, and a nice BMW. Like, oh, that'll be so cool. So I think, that seemed to be what my career and my vision was going to be, was going along that line, which there's nothing wrong with that. I just realized in college that was absolutely not meant for me. So beforehand, it looks like, okay, I need to go to college. I need to get a degree. I need to go into the corporate world, work for a great company, and just do my role. Now it's more of, I really value my time. And so I love working hard, but there's nothing better than knowing that I'm on my own time. So to me, it's like, I want to keep creating. I want to keep putting out content to the world, whatever that might be, podcasting, YouTube content, maybe a Netflix type doc, maybe my own event one day. I want to keep being involved in doing those types of things. So it's crazy to, kind of similar to when you had that transition from high school to college, of like what I thought was who I wanted to become to who I want to become now. I never thought that was going to happen. I had always wanted to live in LA. There was never any idea of like getting into podcasting or anything entertainment. And now I feel like that's the route I need to go. It's along this entertainment route of like people and documenting stories. I wouldn't say like acting. Maybe that'd be cool to try one day, but I love documentaries. I love conversations. I love connecting with people. I love hearing the highs, the lows, the in-betweens. So it's just crazy to look back. It's like I went from, once again, I guess to summarize it all, it's just, I thought just go into the business world and work for a great company and that's going to be it, to why don't I start my own great company and try to put out that type of energy to the world and connect with people. And that's just kind of where I see myself going. It's just always this work in progress. It's always this game of pushing myself, of just believing that this, I'll be 3 years in August with this project, and I still feel like I'm just getting started. That's so weird. It's just so crazy to me. Like 3 years, like blink of an eye has gone by so quick, but it's just like what could happen? What are the possibilities? What's the next chapter look like? How do I turn this into a sustainable, full running business where I can pay people full time and like bring in that team of people? And that's what excites me, is like to be able to do this at scale. And that's the thing. It's not like yeah, it's cool. It'd be awesome to make a lot of money and all that. But I want to, the sooner I can bring people inbound and like to be part of this and really help this like grow, that to me is like the most exciting part. I mean, shout out to my man Kirk, who's in the room right now. He's done a lot of my BTS stuff and other projects, super helpful. Shout out to Nils out in Germany. I send him I cut the clips and I send it to him out in Germany. I send it to him on a Monday night, and Tuesday midday I wake up, or not, I don't wake up midday, but I send it Monday night, and by Tuesday midday I have my clips for social media with all the subtitles and titles. Shout out to Michael out in St. Louis. He's been a huge help. Shout out to Ben Justice. He has been running like a separate blog series on the Purpose in Youth website where it's like doing these types of interviews but just on a blog. So shout out to Dylan, my roommate and longtime best friend, just like a mental coach and helping with ideas. And shout out to Reese Hopper, like all these people that are playing such an important role, because this isn't a full running business. This is like them helping out on the passion. Like they're believing in, whether it's me, whether it's the beard,
right,
or I'm not trying to be funny. It's amazing when you have other people that can kind of believe in what you're creating, and I just would love to one day get to a point where I can pay these people respectfully what they deserve, and then I can do this more, and I can put out podcasts twice a week instead of once a week, and do group episodes once a week. And it's just it's exciting, even in the times when I'm getting stressed out because I'm trying to figure out what's the next step, how do I get this to make that turn of a chapter. It's like, how amazing is it that that's what you're worrying about? You're trying to build your dream. Like you have a sense of direction. Like you know what you're working towards. Like how amazing is that? Because it was just 3 years ago, you didn't know what to do.
Right.
You just graduated college. You had this little idea. Now it's not an idea anymore. You've executed. Now it's just about how do you keep executing and how do you keep growing this and growing this and growing this. So it's just been amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. You're asking yourself the right questions though. I think that's so with a lot of these people too, what they have in common is that they're so self-aware. Yeah. Right? And to like a fault. Like they ask themselves consistently, where am I at? What could I be doing better? That's what I was talking about, the numbers, right? Like, what am I doing? What's been working? What's not working? And you'll be shocked. There's a lot more people who are so stuck in what's going wrong that they're not focusing on what they could do right or what they could do better.
Again, hung up almost like, oh, this is not right.
Yeah. And it's like I said, there's no better or worse, but that's a stunt in growth. Yeah. If you're not like, one, because what you just said, right? You're practicing gratitude very regularly. You're recognizing how long the journey has taken. Mm-hmm. You're recognizing that it's been 3 years that you've grown, and you're also recognizing the people around you, right? Mm-hmm. That is just being in a state of gratitude consistently. I'm assuming when things get really like hard and all that stuff. And then the person who really changed my idea of like I'm supposed to be there now was when we interviewed Danica Patrick, right? Race car driver, one of the first female race car drivers. When we interviewed her, I was 26 years old. She was retiring or coming close to retiring, and she said that her career was 26 years old. And I was just like there was a moment, like I don't even remember what happened for the next 5 minutes or 10 minutes in the podcast because my brain just was like in this, it was whatever that emoji, that brain explosion emoji, because I had been, at 26, so I had been doing it for 3 years, and I'm like, I wish I was further. People keep asking me, what are you going to create on your own? As if what I'm doing isn't good enough. Like I need to have something else. So now I'm getting all this pressure from other people when they're genuinely just trying to be nice, but they're creating a pressure that they don't understand they're creating with me. Because when you ask me, what else should you be doing? You're implying that what I'm doing right now isn't good enough or that I'm not doing the right thing. And so when she said that her career was 26 years old, and here I am, a 26-year-old woman recording her, I was like, wow, my career is 3 years old. It can barely talk and walk. It's still kind of like, it's an infant. Yeah. And when I look at, you've been doing it for 26 years, your career as a grown woman, you deserve to retire and try something different. But now when I talk to people, especially people who just moved to LA, and they're like 1 year in, and they're like, nothing's happening. I'm like, your baby can't walk. Your career can't walk. It literally cannot. It is still trying to figure out how to crawl. When you get to 10 years old, your career is still, what is that, elementary school, right? It's making new friends. 5 years old, that's where I'm at. I'll give that example. My career is just getting into school. It's just like making new friends, socializing, learning. And when I keep comparing it to a person and making it more human than this number that's supposed to measure me or measure my life or measure my income, when I can make it more human, it changes it. It makes me appreciate it a lot more. And it's like I have so much love for this 5-year-old that has just been with me for so long and that I've been able to keep alive for so long. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like I think you appreciating gratitude and doing that, and also looking at it like it's just the beginning. And it sucks because when you're 22, you don't want to hear that. Yeah. When you're 24, you don't want to hear that. Like, I didn't want to hear that. But now when she said that, I was like, good job, Tiff. Yeah. Like, it's still here. You're still moving. And my God, what is this career going to look like at 26? Yeah. What is this grown person of a career going to look like at 26? I'm so excited to see that. Yeah. And so I get to stick it out until I get there.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, it's like, what am I going to do? Sit here and complain that that's the whole thing I look at. It's like, there's nothing that's going to benefit from complaining. So it's like, you might as well be appreciative of what you got and keep moving forward. Don't let like little speed bumps hold you down. Like, you just have to keep moving. That's my whole thing, is like, you just have to keep moving forward. You got to keep producing. You got to keep whatever it is, like hustling. You just have to, I don't know. It's just, there are times where we can get caught up and get held up on like, what's not working? Why is this not working? Where it's like, okay, it's good to assess and it's good to reflect on what's happening, but don't pull yourself down and think you're a failure and let that unmotivate you. If anything, let it fire you up to keep moving, to keep trying to produce and see like what your capabilities are.
And that takes practice. Yeah. That takes practice, because the only guarantee is that something is going to go wrong. Yeah. The only guarantee is that like technically the only guarantee is that you're going to die, right? And that tends to be a big issue with people too, in timing. Mm-hmm. But, I think 1 week ago, there was some crazy big thing that happened on the podcast, and it got fixed. But it was like, we had never had that kind of issue before. It had never happened. And it was just like, it felt like the biggest failure. But I guarantee you, we're never going to feel like that again. But at the same time, it's like, wow, it feels like everything is wrong right now.
Yeah.
But after you've screwed up every week for 3-4 years and you figure something else out, your brain, even though it feels terrible in the moment, can go back to that sense of hope, back to like, remember when this was sucky and then we still figured it out, remember when this thing exploded in our face and we still figured it out. So you can keep that faith, but it still doesn't, it takes practice to even get yourself to that place every time of like, I'm gonna figure this out, I'm gonna work this out, I'm not gonna give up on it.
I could spend so much time talking with you, Tiff.
I'm sorry, like, was this the hour number 3 right now that we're in right now?
We're wrapping up right now. Closing questions. One, where can people find you on social media? I say
stick to Instagram for right now. I think there's a lot of things that I've been thinking about. Like I said, that one question, what are you creating on your own, Tiff? When things change, when I have updates, I'm going to try to I will do a half marathon in a couple months. So I'm going to start switching up my 5 a.m. runs to really train for that, and of course take people along that journey. So Instagram is where everything will be announced and sort of be the platform that I put things on first. And then as I start to grow and change things up, it'll be other places, but Tiff Tyler Film on Instagram.
Make sure if you guys and gals are listening, go drop a bunch of Bearded Man emojis on her comments. She'll know you came from the Bearded Man podcast. Send her some DMs.
That's cool.
Before I ask the final question, honestly, thank you for taking the time to come in here. You and everything you represent is the energy, like I was just talking about. Like it's amazing. Everything that you guys have done for the School of Greatness podcast, or are doing, I should say, amazing. I got the chills when I had. We booked this podcast. I was starting to do the research, and I had read online that you literally started working on this podcast the month that I started listening to it, and I was like, there is something weird about how the world works. And I could say so much, but know that for me personally, that the content you guys have created completely changed my life. This conversation wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for it. But really too, like, just your positivity, your energy towards the world, it's amazing. So thank you for taking the time to be part of this, because this has been an incredible podcast, an incredible conversation that I know whoever listens to it this far has enjoyed, got inspired, learned something.
Okay, good.
A lot of gems. So know that I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Thank you, and I appreciate being out here, and I hope so. I tell my friends, I'm like, my friends tell me they know that if I talk to them, it will never be a 5-minute conversation. It's literally always an hour. So I appreciate the patience that you had with me as I process things in my brain, but I'm always happy to support people, and I think your purpose of teaching through other people's stories is just what everyone needs. You know what I mean? Like, because I know you're gonna ask the final question, but here's another big takeaway from the podcast. Like, everyone that we're celebrating right now hasn't fully lived their lives yet. So the people that we're admiring at this point, right? The people that we are like buying all these concert tickets for, putting all of our money towards, it's fine that that's happening. We don't know the end of their story yet. So I always caution people to have conversations, to really look into people, to really meet as many people as you can before you idolize them, because you don't know how their story's going to end. But if you go back and study people who have lived and died, that might be a way better use of your time, because at least you know how it turned out.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's just my caution. It's just like, I'm glad that you're like, I'm going to keep learning. I'm going to keep talking to people. I'm going to keep getting to know people, because truthfully, we're all looking at everyone's highlight reel on Instagram and not seeing the behind the scenes.
You're right.
So when you can really talk to someone and get to know them, you can really understand who they are and then become a fan. You know what I mean? And then support them and what they're doing. But just don't be fooled sometimes by the people you
got to dig.
You never met.
You got to dig. You can't just look at like you're saying, like the highlights, because it's hard. Yeah.
Trust the person who cuts the camera on and off. You know what I mean?
I know. Last question for you. For somebody that's listening, hasn't found that passion, hasn't found their purpose out just yet, what would you say is the best 2 or 3 pieces of advice you'd give them?
If you haven't, I would say first look at what you do as a hobby, right? Look at what you do when you're not thinking, what makes you happy. So some people color, some people like, you know, they'll watch movies, but like what kind of movies? You know, whatever is something, if you run to let go of stress, that's my first thing is always just like, because technically I'm living my hobby. It was something I just love to do, and it became that thing. And like I said, there were many factors that if you listen to this interview, you understand the factors of how that came to be. But what do you do as a hobby? And then the second thing is put yourself in the mirror as much as you can. Like, consistently evaluate when you're happy and when you're not. What relationships around you make you happy and don't make you happy. Because I think sometimes when we're fearful of pursuing something, I think everyone knows what they want to do. I think they'd lie to themselves if they say, I don't really know what I want to do with my life. I just think they're afraid. And so sometimes it's not really looking at yourself in the mirror and dealing with that fear. And sometimes it's the people around you who really can be compressing that dream without even trying to do it. Yeah. Like I said earlier, I think everyone has their best intention, but they subconsciously bring other people down. The first book I ever read in self-improvement was The Art of Nonconformity by Chris Guillebeau. And you got to understand, I was like crying when I met him. I interviewed him twice. Never thought, like, I'm telling you, all these interviews that I've done, all these books that I've read, to be sitting in front of these people and filming them was just like what is my life? Like, I'll be honest about that. But in the very beginning, I think it's in the intro of that book, he talks about this science experiment, which you might have heard, other people might have heard, but I'll just say for people who are trying to pursue their dream and don't know what to do, I recommend the beginning of this book, or really the entire book. He said that scientists put 3 monkeys in a cage, right? Put food at the top of the cage. And every time they went up to get the food, there was a shock. Every time. Like, they couldn't. Every time they went up, climbed up the cage, there was a shock. They couldn't get to the food. He did that for maybe about a week. I could be butchering this. He takes one monkey out, right? Puts a new one in. They're still going up. They can't get the food. At one point, there's one monkey in there who was in there from the original experiment, right? And 2 new monkeys, something like that. And one of the new monkeys goes up for the food, and the monkey who already knows that they're going to get shocked pulls them down. He's trying to stop them from getting hurt, right? And the scientists continued to rotate monkeys until there were no original monkeys left, right? These guys are in the cage. The electric shock had actually been turned off. So if they went for that food, they would have got it. But every time a new monkey is introduced, everyone keeps pulling them down, and none of them even know why, right? Because none of them even experienced that shock from that original cage. They just know, don't go up there. Don't go up there. Don't try it. And my mind was blown. So when it comes to the people around you who are sometimes pulling you down or telling you it's literally from either a past experience or a failed dream that they've had, or a failed dream that their grandparents had that have been brought down into them that they never even tried it, but the fear of failure is so ingrained in them that they can't allow you to go and pursue it too. So that chapter, that I think was literally just the intro, was the first time that I was like, wow, I can, and this was my job before I moved to LA. This was sitting in the production company reading a book because like I had finished my job. And I was just like, wow, when my parents are, my dad sent me earthquake articles when I first moved to LA. Of course. He was just afraid for me. My mom was afraid. Everyone was afraid for me, but it wasn't intentionally. And of course, when your parents are afraid, you get very afraid. But the people around you, if you're constantly evaluating and seeing and looking in the mirror, like, am I really afraid, or is it everyone around me's fear that's really stopping me from pursuing what I want, or even saying what I really want? Like, that's the only way to know, is to stop, evaluate. Who's around me? What are they saying? But truthfully, those monkeys in that cage, I was just like, oh, they're not, if they're trying to save you, they're trying to help you, but really they're stopping you. So that's my other piece of advice, is like, don't let the fear of other people who don't even sometimes know where that fear comes from stop you from even voicing what you want. Because I truthfully wouldn't have moved to LA if I didn't tell people that's what I wanted to do. As soon as I said this is what I wanted, people say the universe, but everybody around me started conspiring to figure out how to make it happen for me. everything that I've done, working with Lewis, working for the WNBA, my cousin bringing those videos home from her phone, like all these things were like, Tiff wants something, Tiff can do something. Let's see what happens if I put this in front of her. So that's what I say. Like, keep looking in the mirror, keep self-evaluating. And then the last thing, I think the third tip would be forgiveness. So I know we talked about the gratitude list, right? Mm-hmm. And that was a big thing for me because Lewis, that's his thing. He wakes up in the mornings, 3 things that he's grateful for. Before he goes to bed, 3 things that he's grateful for. But for some reason, that didn't resonate with me. Like, I don't know why, but like, he always says that if you're in a grateful state, you can't be angry, right? And I'm like, why am I still angry? Because I'm grateful. I'm grateful for where I am. I'm grateful for what's happening. But I did a podcast really a couple of weeks ago, different podcast. And the woman said that before she goes to sleep, she does a forgiveness list. So she wakes up in the morning and she does her gratitude. But at night, she'll forgive other people and she'll forgive herself. And that has changed me, because it wasn't so much that I wasn't grateful. It was that I didn't forgive myself for whatever went wrong, and I didn't forgive the people around me for what I perceived as something that they did wrong to me. So now having that forgiveness list, if you're not sure about what you want, if you're not sure about what your next step is, maybe you also just need to be in a place of forgiveness. Can I forgive myself for the last 3 years I didn't go for it and move forward? Can I forgive the people around me who might have been pulling me down in that fear and move forward? So I think forgiveness is something I haven't heard a lot of people talk about, but has been reintroduced to me in the last couple of weeks, where I'm like, this is going to make a very big difference in the next 5-year Tiff. Because the last 5-year Tiff was very grateful and very passionate and very open and went through a lot. But the next 5 years of forgiveness, and even the forgiveness of the assumption of who I'm supposed to be or need to be because of other people's perceptions, like, that's going to be a huge difference in my life moving forward.
I love it. Tiff Tyler.
Crushed it.
You killed it. You more than crushed it. You killed it. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. We'll catch you guys next time. See ya!